You think the moment they let you go, that's it. Story over. They move on. You're the only one left replaying the memories, staring at old chats, wondering what you did wrong. You're the one lying awake at night, checking when they were last online, trying to guess if they've already replaced you. Meanwhile, they look calm, unbothered, even happy. It feels like they're fine and you're broken. But here's what no one tells you. Most of the real shift doesn't show up when they reject you. It shows up later when they finally realize they haven't just lost access to your body, your time, or your messages. They've lost access to your emotional world. When it clicks that the version of you who would always answer, always explain, always come back is actually gone, that's when the way they treat you starts to change in ways you probably never expected. Let's be honest, emotional rejection hits deep. When someone pulls back, leaves you on red, or ends things out of nowhere, it doesn't just hurt your feelings, it shakes your sense of worth. You start asking yourself heavy questions. Was I that easy to walk away from? Did they ever really care? How are they laughing on social media while I'm struggling just to get out of bed? You overthink every message you send, every time they didn't reply, every little sign you missed. And because they're quiet, you assume they don't feel anything. You assume their silence means peace while yours means failure. But that's only half the story. A lot of what they do or don't do at the beginning is based on one simple belief. They think you're still there. They think if they change their mind, they can always come back and find you exactly where they left you. This video is about what happens when that belief starts to crumble. We're going to break down how your silence after rejection can affect how they see you, how their brain responds to losing your presence, and how it often changes the way they treat you once they realize you're no longer emotionally on standby. This is not about manipulating anyone or trying to make them suffer. This is not about no contact as a trick. This is about understanding human patterns and how the nervous system, which is just the body's inner alarm and comfort system, gets used to your attention like a habit. When you stop feeding that habit and pull your energy back for real, everything shifts. My goal is to help you protect your self-respect, stop begging for love, and see how distance can change the dynamic without you turning into a cold, bitter version of yourself. Think about how things looked before you ever pulled back. Maybe this sounds familiar. They started taking longer to reply. The calls became shorter or less frequent. The affection turned into confusion. They sent mixed messages. I care about you one day. I'm not ready for anything serious the next. And every time they pulled away, you did the opposite. They needed space, you pushed closer. They went quiet, you opened up. They gave you half effort, you gave them everything. You weren't being foolish, you were trying to hold on to something you cared about. You told yourself, if I just show them how much I care, they'll see my value. But what actually happened was very different from what you intended. Here's where psychology comes in simple terms. The brain loves patterns. It likes to predict what happens next. Imagine a little mental checklist. When I do this, that happens. Over time, this becomes automatic. Kids do it with candy. If they cry and someone gives them a sweet, their brain quietly links crying with reward. They don't think it through, they just feel it. Adults do the same thing in relationships without realizing it. If every time they pull back from you, you move closer, their brain begins to connect my distance with more attention, more reassurance, more effort from you. Without intending to, you train their system to feel safe, taking you for granted. You become the constant. You become the one thing they don't have to worry about losing. And when something feels guaranteed, most people stop treating it as special. Not because they're heartless, but because humans start valuing what feels scarce and relax around what feels permanent. Think about water. If you have it every day, you don't sit in awe every time you pour a glass. You only truly appreciate it when the tap runs dry. You became their emotional running tap. They knew they could disappear for a few days, and you would still be there when they felt lonely. They knew they could answer with dry, short replies, and you would still pour your heart out. In their mind, they didn't believe they were losing you. They believed they were managing you. That's why, in the beginning, after they reject you or fade out, their behavior can look so cold. They may not block you. They may not even be cruel. They're just easy, detached. They might watch your stories without saying anything. They might like a post here and there to keep a tiny string attached. They may keep you in that backup file in their mind. And because you're still chasing, still checking on them, still writing paragraphs explaining how you feel, their nervous system stays relaxed. You haven't really left. They still feel emotionally safe, even if they've removed you from their day-to-day life. But then something changes, not on the outside first, but inside you. There comes a day when the exhaustion hits harder than the fear of losing them. The chasing becomes heavier than the thought of letting go. Maybe you cried one night and realized you weren't even crying about them anymore. You were crying about the version of yourself you didn't recognize, the one begging for crumbs. That's usually when a true silence begins, not a 24-hour test, not a let's see if they notice pause, a deep, tired, honest decision, I can't keep doing this to myself. When that version of silence starts, you don't need to announce it. You don't need to send a dramatic final message. You don't need to say, I'm walking away. You just do it. You stop explaining yourself to someone who never really listened. You stop refreshing their profile to see if they're online. You stop sending messages to check in. And instead of pouring your energy into trying to change their mind, you start pouring it slowly, imperfectly, back into your own life. That is the moment their internal pattern starts to break. At first, they might not react much. Those first few days or weeks, they might actually feel relieved. The emotional responsibility is gone. No more heavy texts to avoid. No more guilt when they see your name pop up. They feel free. But remember that pattern in their brain. If I ever want comfort or attention again, I can always go back to you. That belief is still there, sitting quietly in the background. Life goes on. They talk to other people. They scroll. They go out. But one day, something small happens. They feel a bit lonely. They're bored. They're curious. They want a familiar comfort. So they reach for that old emotional switch they're used to flipping. They check if you're still there. This is where things begin to shift. Maybe they notice you haven't watched their story in a while. Maybe mutual friends mention you're busy, you're focused, you're different. Maybe they open your chat and see that the last few messages were all from you, and there hasn't been a new one in a long time. That's when a subtle awareness creeps in. Wait, did I actually lose them? It's there, even if they don't say it, even if they push it away, because for the first time, the pattern in their brain doesn't hold up. Distance no longer triggered more effort from you. It triggered silence. And the nervous system, which loves the comfort of always having your energy available, feels a tiny, quiet panic. For a lot of people, this is when their behavior toward you starts to change. Often it doesn't begin with a deep apology or a long speech. It starts small. A "Hey stranger" text, a random story reaction, a "This reminded me of you" message. They dip a toe back in, not always because they're ready to treat you better, but because they need to know, are you still mine emotionally? Do I still have access to that version of you who always came back? How you respond in that moment often decides what comes next. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine someone named Ahmed. He went through a breakup where his ex said, I just don't feel it anymore, but still wanted to stay friends. In reality, she stayed in his life just enough to keep him emotionally available while she explored other options. Every time she felt lonely, she'd call him. Every time she needed help, she'd lean on him. But whenever he brought up feelings or commitment, she'd shut down. Eventually, his heart couldn't take it. He didn't fight. He didn't curse her out. He just quietly stopped being available. He stopped answering every late-night call. He didn't jump when she messaged. He took longer to respond, and when he did respond, he was kind but calm. No extra emotional energy. No long explanations. For a while, she shrugged it off. He's probably busy. But as time went on, she noticed something. Her backup plan wasn't responding like a backup anymore. The friend she could rely on to be there at any moment now had his own life, his own priorities, his own boundaries. Her tone shifted from casual to cautious. She started treating him with more respect in conversation. She became more careful with her words. She even asked him directly, "Have I lost you?" And the truth was, in the way she once had him, yes, she had. Now, did that mean they got back together and lived happily ever after? No. That's not the point. The point is that the way she treated him changed once she realized she no longer had guaranteed access to his emotions. And that's a pattern you'll see in many different stories with different names and faces in different countries and cultures. When they know you're gone for real, their tone with you often becomes more careful, more polite, more intentional, or, if their ego can't handle it, more reactive and agitated. Either way, the shift reveals something. They feel the loss. Before we go deeper, I want to pause and talk to you directly. If you're listening to this and you feel like I'm describing your situation, if you're nodding silently or maybe even tearing up a bit because it feels like someone finally put your experience into words, take a moment for yourself. Breathe. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're just human, and your heart has been carrying a lot. If this is speaking to you, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share a bit of your story in the comments. Not for numbers, not for hype, but because there's something powerful about realizing you're not the only one who feels this way. When you write it down and see other people going through the same patterns, it reminds you that you're part of a community of people trying to heal, not just a broken soul in the dark. Let's talk about what happens inside their mind when they know they've truly lost you. At first, it's usually not, "I made a huge mistake." It's more like, "Why aren't they reacting the way they used to?" That confusion can show up as curiosity, jealousy, or even irritation. They may notice you seem lighter when they see you in person. They may see you looking more focused, more put together, more present in your own life. Remember, your silence isn't just you not texting. It's you redirecting your energy. When your attention is no longer wrapped around them, it begins showing up in other areas. Your work, your health, your friendships, your hobbies. And as you become more centered in yourself, your whole presence changes. Human beings are very sensitive to energy, even if we don't always have the words for it. When they were around you before, they could feel your anxiety, your hope, your need for reassurance. They could feel that underneath your kindness was a quiet fear of losing them. That fear made you overgive, over-explain, overstay. Now, when they encounter you, even if it's just online, that fear isn't driving your choices anymore. You're calmer, you're less reactive. You might still care, but you're not clinging. That calm unnerves them in a way your tears never did, because your tears still tell them, "I'm attached." Your calm says, "I'm not chasing you anymore." There's another piece people don't talk about enough. The nervous system, that internal wiring that responds to danger and safety, doesn't just respond to what people say. It responds to patterns of presence and absence. When you were always there, their system built you into its sense of stability. Even if they didn't want a relationship, they liked knowing you were there if needed. Losing that can feel like a rug getting pulled from under them emotionally. So they might treat you differently in subtle ways to test if the rug is really gone. They might suddenly compliment you more. They might become kinder in conversation. They might act weirdly offended that you took your energy back. "Oh, so now you're too good to talk to me." All of those reactions are actually about one inner question. Are you really gone? Now we need to talk about your side of this again, because everything they do when they feel they've lost you only really matters if you're clear on what you want and what you won't tolerate anymore. When someone feels you slipping away, they may offer just enough warmth to pull you back in without any real intention of changing the way they treat you. This is why so many people get stuck in on and off situations for years. Each time you try to leave, they feel the loss, they change their tone, they act sweet, you come back, and then the old pattern returns. Over time, that cycle wears down your self-worth more than a clean breakup ever could. So what do you do in your silence besides not texting? This is where most people struggle. They think silence is just sitting there staring at the wall, trying not to reach out. No. Silence is not empty. It's a space you fill with yourself. It's you slowly rebuilding your identity away from this person. You begin by allowing yourself to feel the grief instead of numbing it with hope. You let yourself cry without sending them the "I miss you" message afterward. You feel the urge to check their page, and instead, you put the phone down and step outside for a walk. You let your body remember there is a world that exists beyond waiting for them. Little by little, you start reintroducing things that make you feel alive. Music that isn't tied to them, friends who love you without games, hobbies you abandoned because you were too busy emotionally babysitting this connection. It's not glamorous. Some days you'll still wake up with that heaviness in your chest. But over time, your nervous system gets new signals Safety can come from inside you, not just from hearing from them. That's when your silence stops being a strategy and becomes a state. You're not using silence to get a reaction anymore. You're just genuinely quieter because your life is finally speaking to you louder than their absence. From the outside, they may respond to this in different ways. Some will grow distant and stay away. They will let you go and never look back. As painful as that is, it's also clear. And with time, you'll see it as a blessing because it frees you for something healthier. Others will circle back, sometimes softly, sometimes dramatically. They may tell you they've been thinking, they may confess that realizing you were really gone made them question their choices. They may say they regret how they treated you. And sometimes those words are sincere. People do grow, they do wake up. But the decision you're faced with then is not just, do I take them back? It's, do their actions match my new standards? Can I trust them not just with my feelings, but with my peace? Because here's the real transformation. When they know they've truly lost you, the biggest change is not in their behavior, it's in yours. You're no longer that version of yourself who will accept any treatment just to keep someone close. You're not willing to trade your sanity for a couple of sweet messages anymore. You might choose to give them another chance, but you'll be slower, more observant, less desperate. Or you might choose to walk away completely, even if they finally see your value, because you've come to understand something powerful. You deserve someone who doesn't need to lose you to act right. So let's recap in simple terms. When they think they've truly lost you, not just because you didn't reply for a day, but because your whole energy has shifted, how they treat you often changes. The casual attitude usually disappears. They become more careful, more curious, sometimes more respectful, and sometimes more reactive. Your silence breaks the old pattern where their distance always brought you closer. It sends their brain and nervous system a new message. Your access to me is not guaranteed. That message can create discomfort, curiosity, and in some cases regret. But none of that is promised. What is promised is that when you stop chasing and start choosing yourself, your nervous system begins to heal, your mind becomes clearer, and your standards get higher. If this video helped you feel even a little more grounded, a little less alone, or a little more aware of your own power, I want to invite you, gently, to subscribe for more content like this, like the video if it gave you some clarity, and share your story or the line that hit you hardest in the comments. I don't say that to pressure you. I say it because there's something healing about turning your pain into connection, about realizing there are thousands of others trying to protect their hearts and learn healthier patterns, just like you. I want to leave you with this. Silence is not cruelty. It's not immaturity. It's not a game when it comes from a place of truth. It's you stepping back from something that was slowly draining your spirit. It's you saying, I still care, but I care about myself too now. You're allowed to stop explaining yourself to someone who never really tried to understand. You're allowed to stop proving your worth to someone who couldn't see it. You're allowed to love someone and still choose distance, because staying close costs you your peace. How they treat you when they know they've truly lost you will tell you a lot about who they are. But how you treat yourself in that same moment will tell you who you're becoming. Choose the version of you that sleeps better at night, the version that doesn't beg, the version that can look in the mirror and say, yes, this hurts, but I didn't abandon myself this time. That's real power, and no one can take that from you.